Don't put that out there.
Good morning. We will call the April 14th, 2025 work session of the Douglas County Board of Commissioners. We will definitely come to order. And welcome to the citizens of Douglas County. County Clerk, please take the roll
Yes,
for the record.
Commissioner District 1, Henry Mitchell. Commissioner District 2, Whitney Kenner-Jones.
Present.
Commissioner District 3, Martin Raxton.
Present.
Commissioner District 4, Vice Chair Mark Alcaraz.
Present.
Chairman Dr. Ramona Jackson-Jones.
Present. All right, thank you so much, Clerk. Clerk, did we have anyone sign up for public comment this morning?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Bring them forth.
Okay, before I call you up, I'll just remind you that you have 3 minutes to address the board. Once your 3 minutes are up, we'll ask you to wrap up your comments. We have Joe Fowler here this morning. Okay. We did not have any other sign up.
Okay. All right, with that being said, certainly Board of Commissioners, we've been asked to remove items number 10, 11, and 16 from the agenda. And we also need to add, okay, number 10, number 11, and number 16 from the agenda. Okay, we've been asked to remove those numbers, number 10, number 11, and number 16, Board. Also, we've been asked or requested to add Commissioner Raxton's expenses to the agenda. And Clerk, you'll provide those numbers to us?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, she will when we get to that point forward. Okay. Other than that, Board of Commissioners, are there any changes that need to be made to the agenda other than those requested items? Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the amended agenda?
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the agenda with the amended items as mentioned.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any discussion, Board? We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please indicate by raising your right hand. We have a 5-0 unanimous vote, and the motion carries to accept the adopted, or should I say, adopted agenda. With that being said, our time limits, Board of Commissioners, please just be mindful. We all have 3 minutes to make remarks and 2 minutes for rebuttal. Next on our agenda are the meeting minutes. Board of Commissioners, please review those minutes by tomorrow and be prepared to approve or deny accordingly. And Madam Clerk, you have the next item, proclamations.
Yes, ma'am. We will have a proclamation tomorrow proclaiming the week of April 13th through 19th, 2025 as Public Safety Communicators Week in Douglas County. Katrina Harley will be here to present that. Under grants, we have number 5, approval to accept the 2025 Violence Against Women Act subgrant award in the amount of $86,792 from the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council with a cash match of $28,931 to be funded from a portion of the salary of Melissa LeBlanc, amend the budget, and authorize the chairman to sign all related documents pending final legal review. Melissa LeBlanc.
Good morning. I'm Melissa LeBlanc. I'm the Director of Victim Services in the Solicitor General's Office. This is a continuation grant awarded through the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. The federal amount is $86,792, and the match amount is $28,911. The match requirement will be a cash match from a portion of my salary. For the hours utilized for the match, I spend my time working on grant-related activities and preparing grant reports. This sub-grant is reimbursed on a quarterly basis. The funds help support the salary of our domestic violence prosecutor, Andrea Moldovan, who specializes in domestic violence cases, but also prosecutes our sexual assault, stalking, and violation of TPO and court order cases. Last year in 2024, our office received 521 cases in those 4 categories alone, which is a 6.1% increase from 2023. Wow. And so her work is very vital to our office, this community, and victims of crime by ensuring their safety and holding offenders accountable. That's all.
Thank you so much, Melissa. Board of Commissioners, do we have any questions for Ms. LeBlanc? Okay, Commissioner Braxton, you have the floor.
All right, good morning.
Hey, good morning.
So just want to get clarification. Is this for a full-time, 1-year position?
It is for a full-time position. We've had this position for, I can't even remember how many years now, but it does renew every year, yes.
Okay. So is there a match required from the general fund every year for this position?
From the federal amount that's awarded to us?
Not the federal, the county match?
No. It's, my time that's spent on the grant is the cash match.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so it's, I won't say in kind, but your time that's spent, that's the match,
Yes.
not a fiscal actual check cut?
Right.
Okay. got
Yes.
it. Okay, great. All right, well, thank you for those clarifications.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, Madam Chair, I yield the floor back to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Commissioner Braxton. Any other questions? For Commissioner Mitchell, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So for the correction then, should we be saying with a cash match, or should we be saying with an in-kind type of a match? If that, you know what I
Because
mean?
it's a portion of my salary,
Okay,
it's a cash match, but we do grant timesheets. And so on those
Okay.
timesheets, the percentage of that match is on those timesheets for what I'm doing towards that grant.
understood,
Award.
understood. But I don't know, just for clarification, if it works that way, then that's fine. If the, it just seems like it should be kind of not worded as there's a actual cash match.
Did you want to say something?
Go ahead.
Okay. I was just going to say, it sounds like to me the match is the salary. Are you, to clarify, is there a check cut from the county pertaining to the timesheet that you enter, or no?
No.
Okay. So it's really just an accrual of your time, and then we are estimating out what that would correspond to from a salary perspective.
Yes.
Okay.
So
That
is
is.
that not in kind?
It sounds like it would be in kind.
Right,
That's
right.
something that I'll look to verify.
Right. And I don't want to kind of mess it up if it works, but it just seems, I want to make sure that we're on our legal toes on making sure that this is what it really is. Because I agree, it doesn't sound like it's a cash match. It's more of an in-kind match, happen to be cash. So, I don't know. We'll figure that out. Okay, thank you. All right, I'll yield back, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you so much, Commissioner Mitchell. Any other questions for?
I just would, I guess,
Ms.
add,
LeBlanc, if you could come back. Thank you.
just to add for clarification, the VAWA grant application requires a cash match, and then they allow for you to make up the cash match as part of the salary. So it's worded that way to match the actual grant application request, to make sure that we are in compliance. And so then when they go and report for compliance purposes, her hours match our portion of the cash match. She's not doing it for free. She's still getting compensated for that work. So I think that's why it doesn't say in kind.
Thank you. Yes, that is exactly how that is working. And we have been audited by the CJCC the past so
Decade.
many years. Yes, every 2 years, and we have passed with flying colors for the last 4 years that I've been director. So everything is adding up and matching accordingly.
Okay,
Yes, I wasn't familiar with what the application requires. I'm not involved in that process, but if that is what it is, that sounds to be okay, but I certainly can double check.
okay, fine with me. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Madam
Okay.
Clerk, you have the floor.
Number 6, approval to accept a grant reimbursement check in the amount of $12,130.73 from the Georgia Trauma Commission with no match required, establish the budget, and authorize the chairman to sign all related documents pending final legal review. Chief Allen.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, Board, County Administration. Once again, we come upon this time where the fire department has been given opportunity to receive this grant. There's no match, and go into our budget.
Okay. Any questions, Board, about this grant match? Okay.
Thank
Thank you so much, Fire Chief.
We'll move to our business items. Number 7, approval to renew a professional services contract with Appraisal Pro Solution LLC for appraisal consulting at $56 per hour to be funded from the existing appraisal department's budget, and authorize the chairman to sign all related documents pending final legal review. Steve Balfour.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So we are asking for the renewal of Appraisal Pro that has been playing an integral role with our analytics and all areas in our appraisal department.
Okay. Any questions, Board? Commissioner Raxton, you have the floor.
All right, thank you. Good morning. So just looking at Exhibit A under the services, it's just a very, blank statement, or just a very open general statement that adds all areas that's needed. So can you give us a little bit more specifics on exactly what are some of the services that's provided?
Sure. So she assists and with all commercial areas, commercial reval, we're currently, which we are currently in, residential revaluation, residential data analytics. So we're currently, Appraisal Pro is currently very busy at this time. This is where, and last year this time was when they came on board. And so when it does say generic all areas, it's definitely all areas. And experience with Tyler Technologies is a plus, because a lot of years of experience with Tyler Technologies, and we needed that.
Okay. And just final question, is this for one individual only?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, Madam Chair, I yield the floor back to you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. Any other questions? Just one for you.
Yes, ma'am.
How you doing?
Good
Mr.
morning.
Balfour? Just, this is annual, I'm quite sure, right? This
Yeah,
is for an
this
annual.
is an
And then
annual
also
contract.
commercial, there was a period where you were actually working on the commercial valuations to determine where we were. Has this person made a difference?
Well, we actually, in 2022, we did a full revaluation of commercial properties.
I remember.
And yes, and it did make a difference. You can see a vast increase from 21 to 22 with the commercial values. And this particular Appraisal Pro is continuing and assisting in all areas, including residential.
Okay, thank you for answering my question. Any other questions, Board? All right, thank you. Mr.
Thank
Balfour.
you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, you have the floor.
Yes, ma'am. Number 8, approval of a contract for Juvenile Programs Administration Department as a drug screening provider for the Department of Human Services for the for the Division of Family and Children Services, and authorize the chairman to sign all related documents pending final legal review. Jennifer King.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
This is our annual contract with Department of Human Services. Specifically, our Family Treatment Court is the provider to complete drug screening for our local DFACS office.
Okay, any questions, Board? Okay, Commissioner Kenner Jones, you have the floor.
Ms. King, this is for them do they come here to the courthouse to do this?
They do. We also will go out to the home as I have staff available.
And then have there been any discussions, and this is kind of off topic, but about expanding the services to go and be able to provide this where the members of the community are? I know lots of people don't have cars and can't get here.
We do talk internally. Again, it's kind of, I'm limited with the people that are available because it could be any time. But the DFACS workers do reach out pretty often, and then we just coordinate. Yes, we'll get somebody to you, and we've been able to do that some.
And is that something that y'all would be looking at or thinking about expanding in the future if there was funds available?
I would love to.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Any other questions, Board? All right, thank you so much, Director
Thank
King. Thank you. Madam
Okay.
Clerk.
Number 9, approval for Boundary Waters Aquatic Center to accept the proposal from United Pool in the project amount of $2,131,347.45 to be funded by the 2022 SPLOST funds, and authorize the chairman to sign all related documents pending final legal review. Chad Griffin.
Good morning, Chairman, Board of Commissioners, and County Administration. Just here today to present the proposal from United Pools for the renovations of the Boundary Waters Aquatic Center. It's in the amount of $2.1 million, and it'll be funded through the 2022 SPLOST. And this will be able to set Boundary Waters up, the Aquatic Center up for the next 20-plus years.
Very good. Any questions, board? All right. Thank you so much, Director Griffin. Thank you.
Okay.
Madam Clerk?
Yes, ma'am. We removed number 10 and 11, so we'll move to number 12. Approval of a contract modification with the Path Foundation for professional services in the amount of, excuse me, $49,690 for additional task for design of the county-wide multi-use trail network to be funded through the P&C department budget, and authorize the chairman to sign all related documents pending final legal review. Allison Duncan.
All right. Good morning, Madam Chair and Board of Commissioners.
Good morning.
This is a modification of our contract with the Path Foundation to continue the design work that we're doing on the countywide multi-use trail. I want to make it clear this is separate from the model mile work. That is being funded out of the 2016 SPLOST. We have the balance of about $190,000 that we're moving into the phase with that, where we will design the trail segment. We've been working over the last few months to avoid impacting one of the neighborhoods that had some concern about using their neighborhood green space along the Sweetwater Creek. So that is a separate project that is from a different funding source. What we're bringing you here today is, again, the continuing work to develop a robust concept plan to show us the alternative alignments for the south side trails, specifically looking at the trail between the Dog River Library and the Chattahoochee River. These are the trail segments identified as S1, S3, S4 in our feasibility study. And then we're also looking at the potential trail between Pumpkintown Park and the Little Bear Creek Nature Preserve. That is the one identified as S7 of our feasibility study. So what we're asking today is to be able to modify our existing contract with the Path Foundation so that we can bring y'all a concept for where the routing of those proposed trails would be located. And I am happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, Manager. Any questions? Okay. Vice Chair, you have the floor.
I believe all my fellow commissioners got those emails also from the Sweetwater subdivision that you're speaking of.
Mm-hmm.
Has there been any others? Because I know I've had a few in my district, and actually Commissioner Rax's district, who were concerned about some of those trails coming close to their home as well. Is that the only feedback that you received?
That's the only feedback that we've received so far. We have worked out a solution around the Silver Creek Ranch HOA, and then part of what we're proposing with this phase of the project is to start looking a little bit more in depth into those south side trails. So you're correct. I think if we're referring to the steering committee that we had, we did have some citizens who were part of that steering committee, and they did express concerns about how close the trail could potentially come to their house. I think that what we're doing with this next phase of the project, very similar to what we did with Silver Creek Ranch, is figure out exactly what that alignment could look like. We know that in this part of the county we have a lot of topography, we have a lot of environmental considerations, but we also have a lot of public land, right? So the Dog River Park is 800 acres, plus looking at some additional land owned by the Water and Sewer Authority, as well as land adjacent to the Chattahoochee River that we have an option to work with. We feel confident that we can be able to find an alignment that can satisfy the concern from the neighborhood to not be too close, but then also look at what the options could be to successfully accomplish a trail from the library, all the way down to the Chattahoochee River. And then similarly with the Pumpkintown Park to the Little Bear Creek Nature Preserve, that would all be looking at land that is publicly owned and seeing what the options would be to actually put a trail between those two with minimal impact to any of the adjacent residents.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I yield back, Madam Chair.
All right. Any other questions for Manager Duncan? Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Number 13, approval to cancel, terminate the professional services agreement with Brinks, Inc. and enter into a professional services MOU agreement with Douglas County Sheriff's Department for bank deposit services for probate court, magistrate court, clerk of superior court, tax commissioner, and finance department, and authorize the chairman to sign all related documents pending final legal review. Anthony Choice.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Board of Commissioners, County Administration. Thank
Good
you all
morning.
for having me. Just to give you kind of a brief background of the requested action, Brinks Incorporated has been depositing money for those particular services for quite a while. We received a message from Brinks a couple weeks ago. We've actually been looking at putting that service out to bid, and we've also been in communications with the Sheriff's Department, but we did receive a message from Brinks that they will be going up 10% due to the tariffs effective May 1. And so we're currently paying them around $79,000, almost $8,000 a month for services. We're asking for your approval to submit a cancellation for this contract, to actually terminate it and go into an MOU internal agreement with the Sheriff's Department with a not to exceed of $60 an hour for 2 deputies. We have an MOU agreement that has been viewed by legal. Legal is good with everything that is within it, and we will definitely have final pending approval before asking the chair to sign those documents. And so today we're requesting to cancel the contract with Brinks, or the agreement with Brinks, and to enter into an agreement with the Sheriff's Department. That cancellation will be effective April 30th, and the contract, or the initial agreement with the Sheriff's Department will go into effect May 1. Any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Thank you so much, Director. Commissioner Kenna Jones, you have the floor.
So at the $60 per hour per deputy, do we have an estimated cost that's going to be per month?
Yes, we do. We actually said that we would do 3 hours per day, 3 days a week. So it will actually be roughly about $4,000, right at about $56,000 a year. So it'll be 2 deputies with a maximum, we're hoping a maximum of 3 hours, 3 days a week service.
And is that going to be factored into the overtime budget? How does that?
Yes, that's what we're looking at, is factoring into the overtime budget. Sheriff's Department will present finance with a spreadsheet at the end of the month for those officers, and so that's why we used a not to exceed 60, because we're not sure it will go that high, but we wanted to use that overtime salary that Sheriff's Department has in place as a basis.
And that's not to exceed a total cost to the county of $60,000 per year?
If we round it up to 60, yes, that's what we're hoping it will be, yes.
And is there a cap monthly to make sure that we're not going over the $7,900 to $8,000 that we were already paying per month?
We have not added that to the MOU, but at the board's pleasure, we will be definitely glad to add that to it.
With that, I yield back, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you so much, Commissioner Kenna Jones. Any other questions, Board? Okay, Commissioner Raxton, you have the floor.
All right, thank you. So, Director Shorts, just correct me if I'm wrong, are we looking at approximately give or take about $36,000 in savings?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I guess my question also is the terms.
Yes, sir.
And that's a pretty lengthy amount in the term. So has there been any discussion on why the 50-year term?
No, that was something that was given to me by legal. And so I don't know if it's because it's an internal, when you're saying the term as far as the
MOU.
50-year with the Sheriff's Department.
Correct.
That was a statement that was issued by Attorney Wiggins. And so I'm not sure on that one. I will refer back to legal on that term for us.
Okay. I don't know if we need to have that conversation.
I think it was
Attorney.
reviewed by Attorney Wiggins.
Wiggins, okay.
So I would have to confer with her, but I can certainly take the time to also look at the document and see if I can ascertain maybe the reasons why.
Okay, that would be great. All right, Madam Chair, I yield the floor back to you. Thank
Right,
you.
thank you so much, Commissioner. Commissioner Mitchell?
Yeah, just one. So it appears that these dollars and cents will come out of the overtime budget of the sheriff, if I'm hearing you correctly.
Yes, sir.
Have we thought about not doing it in an overtime line item? And I don't know, it looks like our finance guys is starting to step up behind you there, but because to me, wouldn't it be easier and smarter to just kind of take that, whatever this amount is, and that could be some additional, I guess, don't officers get this outside duty that they can kind of get to have engagements with other work that they could do outside of the norm, and use those types of officers in the sheriff's department and keep it out of the overtime line item budget. I don't know if that was cleared, even trying to do an overline. I'm just trying to creatively do a different way, because to me, the overtime side of that could get expensive.
Time and a half.
Yeah,
Well, and-
time and a half, I'm
Yes.
getting at though, so that could get expensive.
If I may address it, and I will
Sure,
kind of relay back to Director O'Shea as well. In talking to Chief Deputy Connor,
Okay.
he and I have discussed that, and that's why we used a not to exceed 60 as the cap, 60 an hour, because that is the number that they use for outside services. However, I guess the group of deputies that he wants to use that will be eligible for this, he's looking at their time. And so that's why we capped it not to exceed. And plus, he was actually stating as well, this is Chief Deputy Connor was stating as well, it may be easier for them to track it from an overtime standpoint, and would be a little less cost effective for the county as well, because it would not reach that 60. So instead of going into what you're suggesting of saying, we move it to the area where they can actually work in their overtime capacity or in their extra duty capacity.
Extra duty, not overtime.
Yes, sir. Extra duty capacity, that is $60 an hour. What he's looking at is that if we put it into overtime to a group of deputies who actually qualify, it may not even reach the $60. But that's why we use the $60 as our basis to say we will not exceed that $60 amount.
Understood.
So if it doesn't work that route, we can still go the other route, and we're still covered. If that makes sense, I hope.
No,
that
it
makes
does.
sense.
I can see the rationale.
Okay.
Let me hear from our finance director.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Madam Chair,
Morning,
Vice Chair,
good morning.
Commissioners, and County Administration. To address your concern, Commissioner Mitchell, what we have done is ask that they invoice us. When they invoice us, internal invoice, that will serve as backup and audit trail to use to transfer the expense out of that line item to make up their overtime charge. So although they normally have challenge with overtime, this will not impact it because it will be replenished 100%. It also lets us know the cost. On the other side of it, the officers that work that time will have it disclosed on their W-2 and pay taxes for it.
Okay.
Now, we could do it the way you have indicated. It still accomplishes the same cost on the line item for us because we plan to be invoiced and to, through a journal entry, replenish the cost for his overtime. Does that
No,
address
no.
your concern?
Either way, I mean, I get both ways, and I guess where I'm trying to do, and I know the county administrator might want to chime in on this, though, is looking at it the way we talked about in the beginning. It impacts the overtime line item in the sheriff's budget, and that was one of the items from the finance committee perspective that we was trying to control and do a better job at, and actually did a reduction there. So now to put this there, I don't see that we controlling that to that degree though. Even though I know it's going to be replenished, it's kind of like going right back into that line item, I guess. But I don't know if you want to speak to that.
I'm going to let him finish
Okay.
his discussion.
Okay. Go ahead.
So we are open if your preference is to do it that way. But like I said, the cost that's attributed to the service won't increase their overtime. That's why we did an invoice for it. But we can directly put it in. Here's the challenge with your proposal. Then those officers have to receive a 1099, basically, for it.
Okay.
In addition to their W-2, and be willing to treat it as, what do you call it when they have outside service that they're doing?
Right.
Yeah, so we can certainly discuss that with Chief Connor. It's whatever y'all's preference is.
Go ahead.
No, and I am perfectly comfortable with the arrangement that the finance department purchasing have come up with.
The first one of the second. I mean, the first one. What we talking? Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Now, the bigger picture, I think, for us is, under the new arrangement, there's about a $36,000 savings, which is what we're trying to accomplish at this point.
Yes.
Right? So that's, either way, that's what's driving some of this, issue.
Okay, okay. Well, I agree. Either way works. And do understand whether they get a W-2 or 1099. They, meaning that officer, will still be responsible for their taxes either way, whether we take it from them on the front end or either they pay for it on the back end.
Right. We also.
But if I ask, I'll let you finish. But if the officers had their choice, I bet you they would rather get the entire amount and pay their taxes on the back end versus paying it within our system, through a W-2. But here nor there. Yeah.
Well, here's another
Challenge.
something else we need to look into.
Okay.
If they're doing it as an independent 1099 consultant or contractor, we need to make sure that they're still bonded and covered.
Yes.
As employees working overtime, they are.
Okay.
So I think that was the reason or motivation why we went the route I just indicated to you. As independent consultants getting their 1099, I'm not sure we need to talk to the risk
Understood.
management person on that.
And I could go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I think
I'm done. I'm listening to you.
Oh, no, I think the director was going to say. But again, I get either way, and I will defer, and if our county manager feels confident that this is the better route, I can live with that. But I can see either way, as stated, either way could work. But I can see how the bonded way works best to ensure that these funds are being transferred. And are we going to rest assured, even though there's a decent savings here, looks to be, are we going to be assured that we're going to get the savings, or it's going to require more than 3 hours? I think we're saying roughly as a number that we're gauging 3 hours, and then we got a cap. So we're going to kind of say we're going to stay within that box, that frame. If it goes outside of that, what happens? How do we fix that particular issue if it goes outside of that? Because the tax commissioner wasn't ready at the time, and
Yes,
they
sir.
had to wait and do something else, and it took them an additional 2 hours.
Yes,
So-
sir. That's understood. We actually have been in communications with those individuals and stated that one of the problems with Brinks is that their inconsistency has been an issue. And so what we're doing is we're working with the sheriff's department to say that we will have sheriff deputies, 2 sheriff deputies to come to your location. They'll start at 10 o'clock. And we'll work out the logistics in the next couple of weeks of where they will start, where they will end. The other concern for us is that Brinks would charge us for every location in this building. And so the majority of the locations are in this building. And we feel like it would take the sheriff's deputy in consultation with Chief Connor to go from the landfill to the tax commissioner to this building to Truist Bank and one more bank. 3 hours should be plenty of time.
Okay.
Especially if we have everyone ready and saying that they should be in that location at a specific time or around about that time, there shouldn't be any lag there. And in communication with 4 of the 6, they stated that the 10, 11 o'clock hour is plenty of time for them to have their deposits ready so that the deputies can come pick it up and take it onto the bank. So we don't foresee 3 hours being more than enough. We don't foresee that being an issue.
Okay. Thank you, Connie, and I appreciate you guys.
Yes, sir.
Thank you again.
And if
you.
I may, I think, speak to the question from before, I've had an opportunity. I think there was some concern about the 50 years. And so in speaking with Ms. Wiggins, she says that's not a requirement. It can be less if you all desire. It was just permissible.
But it's going to be tough to fire the sheriff anyway, though.
Might not want to do that.
Yeah. So, but hey, I get the concern about a 50-year. I think it only makes sense to be consistent with the other contracts, but it only makes sense. But at the end of the day, I see the huge savings, and it's within house, and I think we can control it best. And
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think that's a great look on that end. So outside of that, thank you again, and I guess I'll yield back. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll yield back.
All right, thank you so much, Commissioner
think you got-
Mitchell.
you got,
And any other questions? Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't see. Commissioner Kenner Jones, you have the floor.
So I'm looking at the contract, and in paragraph 7, it says that the rate will not exceed $60 per hour, but that there is a minimum of 3 hours. There's no cap and no maximum on the number of hours that the deputy can work.
Okay. We
So
can change that. like
I
I'm
would
saying.
ask that to be for a maximum of 3 hours. And just to make sure I understand you correctly, Audrey, it says, so 50 years is permissible but not required. What was the contract with Brinks previously? Was it annually? What was that contract?
If I may be honest, I don't know. We entered into an agreement with Brinks in 2000 from my research. We also had another one that I found for 2014. I have not found anything that is any further than that. In those two, it was a yearly. And so for me, it was, I think we're working under an agreement, but just to kind of cover ourselves, to make sure that we come out of this, we wanted to come before you all with the approval to just terminate this one.
And I would just say for that paragraph 3 that goes over the term of the MOU, and I don't want to speak for my other board members, but I would certainly be more inclined to have a specified term of years that's shorter than that, and we can talk about language of an auto renew for a specified period of time, but I think that 50 years is excessive.
Okay.
So I would like to see that modified. Something else that you mentioned that kind of sparked my interest was that there was an identified group of deputies. What are the qualifications that they have to do this?
Now that I cannot speak to, Commissioner Jones, because that was what Chief Deputy Connor was sharing in a communication that he and I had about this whole process. How can we make sure, because we started off originally with the $60 an hour, and then he started talking about the possibility of having a group of deputies. I'm thinking it is the non-exempt deputies and what their hourly salary is times half. Would it meet the $60? Possibly not, but I'm not sure of what their payroll looks like, so I would defer that question to him.
So is this a situation where any deputy that wants to make themselves available for the additional funding is eligible to apply to be a part of this, or is it just whoever they identify as who gets it?
I think it should be to any deputy, but I think his, and again, I don't want to speak for him. However, I do believe that his rationale is that some of the deputies are exempt and they will not want to. So for that group that is non-exempt, when you look at that group, I think he wanted to introduce it to that group and not a specific, I guess to say a specific different group, but just a non-exempt group that will actually benefit from it versus the exempt. Again, I'll defer that to Chief Deputy, and I'll get some clarity on that as well.
And so with that, I would yield back to you, Madam Chair, just with the request that the amended version be available and not on the consent agenda tomorrow so that we have time to go over it. Yes.
And just commissioners, if you can provide what terms you all do want, we'll make those modifications and changes for you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Braxton, you have the floor. Thank you so much. Commissioner Kenneth Jones.
Yep, thank you, Madam Chair. And just looking in Section 2, it looks like it might be a typo for the name of the bank in the second paragraph.
Okay.
So I just wanted to make sure. Okay, I just wanted to take care of that. All right. Madam Chair, I yield the floor back to you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Mitchell, the
I think-
Chairman of Finance.
I think it should just line up just like all the other contracts. And, whether it's an auto renewal, however it does, but annually, it just lines up, deferring to what Commissioner Kenneth Jones stated. So we can line it all, everything will line up, and we want to worry about one contract is a 5-year contract, one is a 3-year, but if it lines up like normally, that'll be fine. But I don't see nobody going against, unless the sheriff is doing a terrible job, which I doubt. But I do, like Commissioner Kenneth Jones stated, I would like to know kind of who are those group of officers are, not their names, but kind of how he's selectively coming across those 5, 10, or 20 officers, so that we can kind of be fair. And I don't want to exclude anyone, because in my head, I'm thinking it's all of the officers.
Yes, sir.
As opposed to a select non-conforming, non-group of officers. So however that works out, I'm okay with, but I would just like to know kind of what that looks like. So that way, when we go into this MOU with the sheriff, it's clear,
Yes, sir.
And we do want people, meaning somebody within the sheriff's department, to be readily available, because if these guys, these 5 we got, and they all get sick, we got another problem. that now we can't move these funds in and out of the courthouse, I guess. So,
Understood. Yes, sir.
but outside of that, I'll yield back. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Commissioner Mitchell.
It may
Vice
be
Chair.
helpful if Chief Connor could be here tomorrow
Yes,
to
I
explain
would
that.
totally
That would be
agree.
helpful for me.
Yes. So, yeah.
All right. Vice Chair Alvarez, you have the floor.
I agree with Commissioner Mitchell that we do it as maybe an auto renewal every year. But two, just my thought, listening to everything that's being said, when he's talking about selecting a group, it's also probably, he'll speak for this, but it probably by rank, because it is how much they get paid an hour. So I'm sure when they take these certain positions or outside duties, some of those do get paid more than those who are, according to their ranks. So I'm assuming that he's looking at a group that's going to fit within the qualifications of what finance has set forth, so not to exceed. But I'll let him answer for that, but I yield back, Madam Chair.
But it probably shouldn't stop the low end
From having the chance.
$40 an hour guys to make 60 just to kind of get that. They carry a badge and a gun, and they're bonded. I'm assuming the requirements. Not to say that you know this, but that will be kind of the Q&A that we'll have with Chief tomorrow, though. But as long as they're bonded, they should
sir.
qualify.
Yes,
Not if they are an executive or on the commission side officers or non-commission side officers. I just think it should be open up for all. But at the end of the day, he may have a reasoning as to why he's doing what he's doing. But yeah, to your point, though, I think, whatever that select group is, okay. My apologies.
And if I may, Commissioner Mitchell, we actually did, the figures that we actually put together are based on the 60. So
Yes.
regardless of how he chooses, we're going with the 60. We're not sure
Correct.
of that side. And to answer the other question, we did get with Justin McDermott, and the deputies are bonded under the sheriff's bond.
Right.
So that was one thing that we wanted to make sure of as well, which kind of leads back into what Chief O'Shea was suggesting about having them doing the overtime side, and not sure of how that bond will work if they work outside of that. So that capacity. So we're not sure, but we do know that they are bonded under the sheriff's bond.
Do understand, I'm okay with definitely going the bonded route, for
Yes,
sure. But the other part of this was what we just stated earlier about the amount of $60,
Yes, sir.
whether it's paid to a $45 an hour, and I don't know their pay rate, $45 hour officer versus a $70 an hour officer, that part shouldn't matter. But if the qualifications if he or she meets the qualifications, then that, to me, should be qualified.
As long as they don't go over
Yes.
60.
Well, right. Well,
Yes, sir.
so if the chief decides to run this route and he makes $90 an hour, he only gonna get 60.
Yes, sir.
That's all. Okay, I'm sorry, Commissioner Alvarez.
You're back?
I yield back, Madam
Okay,
Chair.
thank you. It's just so good to hear that we're not married to 50 years. Thank you so much, Kenner Jones, Commissioner Kenner Jones. Will there be a period where we can evaluate their services? I know you had an opportunity to evaluate Brink's services, but we
Yes.
want to, give some feedback.
Yes,
Is there any room in the contract for us to do that as well?
Yes,
In case
ma'am.
the
It
services are
should
not
be.
meeting our expectations?
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry for interrupting. It should be in there to where the CFO as well as the sheriff will come together periodically, or their designee will come together periodically to monitor the services and make sure that everyone is, doing what is required, make sure everything is going along like it should be. So yes, ma'am, it should be in there. If not, I'll make sure. I'm sure it was in there, but I'll make sure definitely.
You see it in there, Commissioner Kenner Jones? No. Not will.
No.
Yeah, just want to make sure there's
That's not in there.
some
Okay.
room in case
Yes, ma'am.
the service doesn't, it seems great today, but tomorrow it may not meet our expectations. At least you'll have some wiggle room. Okay. If, any other questions, board? If not, thank you so much, Director
Thank you
Joyce.
all.
And thank you so much, CFO. O'Shea. Madam Clerk?
Number 14, review of Lithia Springs Data Center for Stack Infrastructure's written application under Section 2E of Douglas County Resolution 25-116. Our staff attorney, Audrey Lewis.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners, County Administration. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today about this agenda item. It pertains to Resolution 25-116, which was adopted by the Commission on March 18th regarding a moratorium on applications for special use permits, rezoning, future land use applications, and other matters involving land usage for data infrastructure and processing centers. That resolution did include that the moratorium would capture those persons who may have initiated applications at the local and regional level, but had not had an opportunity to have those applications advertised in accordance to Georgia law and the county UDC. And in recognition that in Georgia, certain landowners may have acquired certain de facto vesting rights, that resolution also provides for a review process to request exemption from the moratorium. And we have received an application from Lithia Springs, Data Center for Stack Infrastructure. If I may have permission just to refer to them as Stack for purposes of brevity. They submitted a letter to the Board of Commission requesting this review on March 27th of this year. That review would occur at a voting meeting, which would be the meeting tomorrow or any subsequent Board of Commissioner meetings not tied to a work session. I think the reason for the timing is for the applicant, there are some matters that are time sensitive. I think, as they alleged in the letter, that there may be some residences or there may be some properties under contract that might expire. That certainly is not a factor in the consideration of whether or not they are exempted pursuant to 2E, but that just explains the timing of placing this item on the work session today for the board's consideration and potentially consideration at tomorrow's meeting. That exemption provides, again, for those that may have acquired vesting rights in Georgia, those that have acquired vesting rights are those whose rights can't be interfered with arbitrarily. And so we have complied legally with preserving that and preventing that by allowing for this exception. And so if the board were inclined to review Stack's application tomorrow, you would do so. I believe you all have a copy of the written letter. You would review it. They will be present. I think they are here as well as their counsel today. And of course, staff would be available, including myself, for any clarifying questions that need to be answered for the board. But essentially, the review would be facts and circumstances that they believe give rise to this vesting right. And in Georgia, that requires some sort of representation from the county or its departments. That approval would likely occur in addition with existing zoning, and that in reliance on those two things, they have had substantial expenditures. And so if you review their application and make that determination, then the application could go forward to be heard at the joint planning and zoning hearings that occur on the, I think, first Tuesdays of the month. Does the board have any questions of me regarding that? I know I gave you a mouthful.
Thank you so much, Attorney Lewis. Any questions for Attorney Lewis? Commissioner Kenneth Jones, you have the floor.
I just have two very brief questions. I do recall when Manager Duncan gave her spiel that there were, that I think Stack was identified as one of the people who were in the pipeline that may be impacted. Am I thinking of the same or the correct?
Yes, they are
entity?
within the pipeline, and so that is why they are submitting this written application.
And so what we're doing now is making sure we are complying with the law to determine whether or not basically that they should be able to go through this appeals process because they believe that they meet all of the exemption requirements.
So just in clarity, your determination would be if they could go forward with an application.
Okay.
So they currently can't under the moratorium, but they are claiming that they are exempted. And so if you all determine that after reviewing their written application that they are, then they could proceed in the process as you would customarily do.
And the hearing, for lack of a different word to use, that they want to do is basically giving them a due process opportunity to be heard on that issue.
On the 2E issue, so it would be a little distinct. Yes, it is in a way a due process. I understand liking in it to that, but I would say it's different from like the due process requirements for like our public hearings that we have at the traditional planning and zoning. I think 2E provides specifically that they submit the written application to you all for consideration for review of that written application. And so that provides them with the opportunity to be heard on whether or not they are exempted.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I yield back.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Kenner Jones. Any other questions? Board? Okay.
Well,
Commissioner
yes.
Mitchell?
Just so I'm clear. There were, if I'm not mistaken, and Allison could probably answer this question, and you may not know the answer to this question. There were at least, I want to say either 3 or 4 individuals, companies that were in the pipeline before this moratorium. Roughly, am I correct in that? And Allison, you might want to come up and kind of help me out with this. But the clarity, I guess I'm trying to ask is the moratorium went in place.
Yes, sir.
And the moratorium, not sure if this was the criteria because I tried to ask these questions. One of which, is it based on the application point of reference as to for those who are in the pipeline or not? Or what was it in the moratorium request that the board decided to make and actually do? So here we are now back to the drawing board of excluding one of the 3 or all of the 4 and with the moratorium. So where are we?
Yes, let me provide this as some context, and hopefully that answers your question, Commissioner Mitchell. So the resolution that you all adopted, 25-1116, says it does not apply to those that already have received approvals and were able to advertise in accordance to the zoning plan.
Meaning who had filed an application?
No, sir. So,
okay.
so it does not apply to those who've already complied with all the legal requirements to be heard at the planning and zoning board meetings. However, for those in the pipeline, as you've mentioned, there is a provision for an exception for those who have already initiated review but were not able to have their applications advertised in compliance with the law, because we cannot put them on a planning and zoning meeting if we have not followed the zoning procedures law and the UDC. And so that's that concept of due process that Commissioner Kenner Jones was speaking to. So in recognition that that may not have occurred, but they may have already initiated review, 2E provides for a process in which they can come before the board and specify what circumstances justify them being exempted from the moratorium. And so that's what STAC has done. So those in the pipeline, they can write to you all and say, hey, these are the reasons why we should be exempted, and then you all would make that determination if they are. And if they are exempted, then they can be heard at the planning and zoning meetings going forward. Anyone else, sorry, it's okay.
No, okay.
Anyone else would just have to wait until the expiration of the moratorium.
But I'm kind of, I think we're saying similar things here. The confusion is either you're in the pipeline and you can move forward, which that was the question back in the time frame when I brought Allison up to ask to say, to understand for those who are in the pipeline, because it sounds to me like these guys are in the pipeline. And how could we refuse them now based on what you just stated?
Well, so
Because you said now, you said the board, The
Right.
board will determine by saying yes or no, because they're in the pipeline, but.
You're a
I-
step ahead.
Okay.
Let me
all right,
back you up.
Pull me back. Put me where I need to be then.
So those in the pipeline, as
Okay.
you've identified, those that have initiated review, they've started their application at the local level and the regional level as required by law, but maybe they didn't get a chance to have it advertised.
Understood.
Those people then would petition to you guys to determine whether or not they could proceed despite the moratorium being in place. So that provides them with the opportunity, and you only have to do that legally for those that have acquired vesting rights. So that's why that's the criteria that was implemented. And so,
So I guess my question though is,
Uh-huh.
and I don't mean to make this long. So if they're in the pipeline, they're in the pipeline.
No, I think that the point of clarification is where you are in the pipeline
Okay.
matters. The overbroad idea of we're encompassing everybody who's ever come to Douglas County and mentioned that they wanted to have a data center, they would be in the pipeline. That's completely different than the two organizations that Allison mentioned at the meeting, which is why we made sure that the moratorium had an appropriate exemption in it to capture people who were either almost completely finished with their process and would have been before us anyway, or for them to have an opportunity to say, am I going to fall outside of that 90 days but still not be disrupted in my process? So this is giving STAC their due process opportunity to say, hey, we had checked all of these boxes, we missed your publication requirement by 4 hours or 6 hours, whatever it may be. So now, because of where we were and the investments that we've made and the obligations or communications that they've had with other individuals outside of this, please give us an opportunity to come back to you, let you make a determination as to whether or not you believe we fall in that exemption. And if you decide that we are eligible for that exemption, then we have the opportunity to come on the next planning and zoning meeting. So it's the
Yes.
stage in the pipeline that you are at that actually makes the difference, not that you just existed as an applicant in
and let me
general.
add this,
But let
maybe.
me add, because I want to make sure we clear, because I'm not saying that you're in the pipeline because you made a request or you said something about being in the pipeline. So let's be clear. I'm not saying that anybody who happened to have made a request or even said something about doing a data center. And let's be also clear. I'm not here advocating and trying to advocate for any data center or not. I just want to make sure that the process was correct, and that was the statement that I made earlier.
Yes, the
before
pro-
now.
the process
That
is-
the process, right. So, but with that being said, though, in the pipeline is what I'm asking now to make sure that we got the clarity. And I think has already been stated. The clarity is you got to check these 5 boxes, not that you just had a conversation with someone about doing this. I got that part. But Allison, correct me if I'm wrong on this note. Are these the only 2 or there are 4 that was within the pipeline, or don't know what boxes he or she had checked? Can we just at least answer that question first? Then we'll kind of, then we'll kind of move into the latter part of the question. So,
All right. In regard to your question, if I understand it, the question is it 1, 2,
2 or 4?
3, or 4?
Correct.
Right? So right now, I would say there are 4 applications for which we have a pending zoning application, right? That means that they submitted their zoning application and paid their fee to the department.
before the moratorium.
Yes, sir, before
Correct.
the moratorium.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. As I think we're discussing here, there were very specific stipulations in the moratorium about who
Correct.
got to advance forward. And as we were very transparent when we presented this at the work session, we said that there would be 2 applicants that were moving through the process.
Okay.
They had not yet passed the deadline, which would have been March 25th, to determine whether or not they would get on an agenda, whether or not their agenda was complete. To that end, the advertising dates were also included as a potential cutoff. So if you had not been advertised, we do have a timeline that we've prepared of all activities relating to the STAC application, and we're more than happy to share that with the Board of Commissioners if it would be helpful to see step by step every date and where that approval landed. Because again, I think as Attorney Lewis is saying there's a question of vesting rights and whether or not there was any activity that would have conveyed vesting. So I will not try to speak as to whether or not they're vested. I will say from a staff perspective, we have treated this applicant no different than we've treated any other application
Meaning
for
stack.
anything. Stack,
Yes, okay.
stream, any
Okay.
of the four.
Okay.
None of them have been treated any differently in terms
Got
of
it.
requiring any submission or process different, not just from any other large project, but from any project that comes before you. And that is a timeline that we're more than happy to present. So you can see and determine if you think that there was any kind of step along the way that was not done prudently in accordance with the law.
So you're trying to say that basically there are two that definitely met the qualifications?
So
Within the-
there are one, I believe the stack application, which is before you today, they were substantially complete with their DRI review by March 18th. But March 25th is our deadline for determining whether or not something goes on an agenda. And our code is very clear that you have your deadline, you take a look at the applications, you have 5 days to determine that it's complete, and then you know our clerk sends you a draft agenda. So it's when that draft agenda is published, that's the trigger for advertising. So I think what the staff would suggest is when you look at the timeline of activities, they had not gotten to the point where the trigger would have been pulled for advertising, because that, under our code, is the publication of the draft agenda, which you get from the clerk.
So they didn't hit the moratorium that we presented.
I think she's saying of the 4, they would have been the furthest along in the process, but
Right.
have not reached the trigger event to get them advertised, and that's why they're in the exemption process now, because if it had been a few days differently, they may have been differently situated. But again, that exemption was accounted for or reasonably likely to happen to some of the companies that were in the pipeline, to use your wording, so that they would have a means and an opportunity to come and explain why they should not be captured in the moratorium. And then if we agree, then they will have the opportunity to proceed in the ordinary course of business.
And I guess the only other part to that, what I'm asking though, is why should we have to even agree if they were within the pipeline?
So I think this
Or
is.
disagree, which, you
Right.
know,
I
yeah.
think your question kind of relates to 2 different points. So it is incumbent on them to submit an application pursuant to 2E for exemption. So we don't control who does or doesn't apply.
I would agree.
They take the opportunity that you all afforded to them to speak to that exemption by initiating it through a written exemption. I think the reason why the dividing line was the vesting of rights being the criteria is because the moratorium is not a permanent bar, right, on them being able to apply going forward. It's just a temporary pause. I think that you all determined to be 90 days. So these are people who are just saying, I don't think I should have to wait 90 days. I think I should be able to be heard beforehand, and it's up to you all to decide if that is applicable, because it is your moratorium. And so the reason that exemption was provided for, because only under Georgia law, only under Georgia law are the people whose rights have vested potentially impacted. So it was drafted with the law in mind. So you all have complied with whatever legal due process is warranted to these individuals under the law, and they will have their opportunity to speak to you for you to make that determination if it meets that exemption.
So to make it clear then, because this is probably, I know they probably said we long overdue on time. The 4 hypothetically that we're speaking of, they would have to make the request to come before us to say, we feel as though we should be exempt from this 90-day moratorium. Got it. And we decide on if they should or shouldn't be based on how many boxes they had checked.
No, so I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's based on whether or not they vested. So when I was listing out that the vesting requires some representation made, so in their application, they are directed pursuant to 2E to put forth any facts and circumstances
I got you.
related to that, and any expenditures that they may have made, and why they relied on those assurances
Right.
in making those. And if you determine that those circumstances occur, then they meet the exemption, and by matter of right, they're heard. Now, of course, there are no guarantees of what happens at planning and zoning
Understood,
meetings,
right. And
but
we-
then they have that opportunity to occur. And so it's just really to protect and preserve those rights that the law says the county has to protect and not interfere with.
So back to what I was saying though, and we're gonna leave this, because I think the four that I know of two, but the four will have to make the request. And then we'll determine that, and I guess I'm only saying, even to that vein, if they fit and met the criteria, it shouldn't matter to come to us to say yes or no. But, you know, I guess we have that's kind of where it.
They didn't meet the criteria
Not
because they failed to.
Well, we're using Stack as an
Right.
example. They met that criteria.
They met the criteria to apply for the exemption.
Correct.
But they
And that's what I'm getting
failed
at.
to
Okay.
meet the criteria of the advertising that's required by law. So we can't place people on the agenda until that's met, but it's recognizing, hey, you were really close, so we're going to give you this opportunity to
Okay.
assert some sort of vesting rights.
Okay. I think I get you now. So
Yes, sir.
that one little caveat is what was missing.
Yes, sir, the advertising
Yes,
piece.
that was missing. That now they're making the request saying, can we come before us?
Because we're so close.
Right.
And so we have some facts and circumstances that we
Okay.
believe exempt us.
So thank you, and I guess now that this is publicly and everybody can kind of hear this whole conversation and understand that they have the other three hypothetically, and I don't know where they are, and so I'm not trying to advocate for or against them, but they know now that if they are within the means of avoiding this 90-day moratorium, they can do so. If
Yes,
they
sir.
don't, and they don't make the request, then they won't. And we'll just keep things moving within the 90-day moratorium.
Yes,
That's
sir.
just-
And
okay. Yeah.
Section 2D and 2E
That's good.
explicitly lay that out.
That's fine. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And thank you, Allison. I appreciate it. Oh, I yield back. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
thank you so much, Commissioner Mitchell. Thank you so much, Attorney Lewis. Any other questions, board? Okay.
I think we took it all up, so I think, yeah.
Okay.
Madam Clerk.
Number 15 is authorization to execute a fiscal year 2025 budget letter from the Department of Family and Children's Services in accordance with the approved budgeted amount of $68.75 per month, which I believe we are changing that amount, and authorize the chairman to sign all related documents pending final legal review. Tiffany Stewart Stanley.
Thank you, Clerk. Good morning, Board of Commissioners. So I'm here
Good
this
morning.
morning for the annual document that's executed for the Department of Family and Children's Services. In the past, I'll give you a little history. In 2023 and 2024, as well as for the 2025 budget, the board has approved $70,000 out of the general fund for the Department of Family and Children's Services. In 2023 and 2024, the board also approved an additional $12,500 that was funded out of the UNINC fund, but that money was money that was transferred out of our portion of the hotel motel tax. So the letter that you have before you today, the amended letter that I gave you right before the meeting, we're asking for this letter to be signed, showing that the Department of Family and Children's Services will receive $5,833 a month, which comes out to be $70,000 a year. We're asking that the additional funding be considered when we consider all of the funding for the hotel motel tax, when we bring that back before you. So today, we're just asking for authorization for the chairman to sign the document for $70,000 because the state needs that document from our local DFACs. That's all I
Okay.
have.
Any questions for our Chief of Staff? Board? Any questions? Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Excuse me.
Next item.
We remove item number 16. So our next items are approval of expenses. Just please review those expenses and be prepared to approve those tomorrow.
And don't forget to
For
add.
Commissioner Kenner Jones and Commissioner Raxton.
Yeah. And you'll just add and have those numbers available. Okay. Board, any comments before I tap into our legal to see if there's an executive session? Madam Attorney, is there a need to go into executive session?
Yes, there is, Madam Chair, for the reasons of real estate litigation, cybersecurity. There's actually a document that is not subject to public disclosure as well that needs to be reviewed, and personnel matters, if we could just move pursuant to those for executive session.
Thank you so much. Board of Commissioners, we do need to go into executive session. Certainly, our citizens of Douglas County, we will take a pause for the calls, the Board of Commissioners and I to go into executive session, and we will return momentarily. With that being said, Board of Commissioners, do we have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the floor. Any discussion? We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please indicate by raising your right hand. We have a 5-0 unanimous vote, and the motion carries to go into executive session. So we will return momentarily.